Who's hurt?
Winston's been hit.
Patch him up and get him to the back as soon as he's stable. Gordon Freeman. It's incredible you made it. We've been getting communications from Alex. I'll see if I can reach her again. Follow me. Over here, Dr. Freeman. Over here, Dr. Freeman. It's Leon. We're all clear. And I've got Gordon Freeman.
Dr. Freeman, you're kidding. Look, I've been on the line with Alex. Her father's been captured.
Over here, Dr. Freeman.
The Eli Vance is indispensable to the liberation.
Alex, it's Leon. And I've got Gordon Freeman with me.
Gordon, you made it through Ravenholm. Thank God. I need your help. They've taken my father. He's been taken to Nova Prospect. The border guns tracked the ship that made off with him and Judith Mossman. While the trains are still running, I'm gonna hitch a ride. Here's where you come in, Gordon. I need you to make your way along the coast until you get to Nova Prospect. It used to be a high-security prison. It's something much worse than that now. But I think it's still easier to sneak in than to break out.
You want him to take the coast road? He won't last 5 minutes on foot. It's spawning season for the antlions.
That's why I called you, Leon. I was hoping you still had the scout car we left with you last summer. The one my dad rigged with the Tau cannon.
Yeah, good idea. Hold on a sec. Norco? Bring the buggy out. Put it on the dock right now. Gordon Freeman will be driving it.
Will do. I just finished mounting an ammo crate on the back.
Good timing. Okay, Alex, we're all set.
Thanks, Leon. Gordon, I haven't driven the coast in over a year, but I have no reason to think it's gotten any safer. Meet me in the depot where the trains unload. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in Nova Prospect. Bye for now.
Bye, Alex. Okay, Doc, before you hit the road, you might want to grab some med kits, restock on ammo, maybe check the map, see where you're headed. There's an ammo supply crate on the back of the car, if that's any comfort. Stay with the car, make use of the thumpers. You'll stand a fair chance against the radio ahead to let you know coming. Shore point to NLO. Shore point to Odessa. Come in, Odessa. You read.
Our finest poet describes it thus.
Shore point to NLO. Shore point to New Little Odessa. Come in, Odessa. Do you read? Shore point to NLO. Shore point to New
Coast kickoff. This interstitial scene came along late in development to connect Ravenholm to Coast. Noticing a trend? Quite a bit of the connective tissue in our games comes together late. In this case, that meant cutting corners wherever possible. We didn't even have time to animate Alex on the monitor. These kinds of scenes are always a challenge to make interesting, and we didn't succeed with this one. It's a good example of what happens when NPCs are treated like signposts without adding character to them or the scene. The result is a forgettable moment where the game's seams show. But that's the nature of development. You only have so much time, and you have to decide where to spend it. Kleiner's lab and Eli's lab were much more important, so that's where we focused our efforts.
Odessa. Come in, Odessa. Do you read? Shore point to NLO. Shore point to NLO. Shore point to New Little Odessa. Come in, Odessa. Do you read? Shore point to New Little Odessa. Come in,
Hello,
Odessa.
Dr. Freeman. The car's all ready for you. Hop in and I'll lower you down to the beach. Come back up, Dr. Freeman. The car's on the pier. The car's ready for you now, Dr. Freeman.
Buggy model. The Buggy's model went through many iterations before reaching its final version. We cycled through designs that satisfied both our artistic and physics simulation needs, but then hit an unexpected issue. Many playtesters, even experienced FPS players, were getting motion sick while driving it. Along with some simulation tweaks, we discovered that altering the Buggy model helped. The more the model obscured the world, the worse the motion sickness became. So we began stripping away parts of the model, removing more and more of the body until players stopped feeling sick. In particular, being able to see the ground through the missing undercarriage made a noticeable difference.
Buggy introduction. We wanted something more engaging for the Buggy's introduction than just having the player hop in and drive away. The crane helped with that. Crucially, we needed players to learn how to recover the Buggy when it flips over, and this sequence forced them into that situation. Training under pressure is always tricky, but we wanted to emphasize the antlion infestation as the reason to stay inside the Buggy. So we kept the antlion threat active and provided a couple of citizens on mounted guns for support. A small bonus? Players also get the experience of being lifted by the crane just before they'll get to operate one.
Good, here we go.
Training course. This training section was designed to let the player play around with their Buggy. At the time Half-Life 2 was released, this level of physical simulation in the vehicle was novel, so we wanted to give players ample opportunity to experiment with it. A player has also just left the tight confines of Ravenholm, and we liked giving him the contrast and reward of being able to move quickly through a large space, feeling safe inside a vehicle. We made sure to require a turbo jump to get out of this area, which doubled as a test to make sure they'd reached a level of comfort in their driving, and also ensured that they didn't leave their Buggy behind.
Buggy physics. The physics for a Buggy took a lot of trial and error. We wanted it to feel fast, even though its top speed was only about 35 miles an hour. So we had to do some cheating to make it work. We added extra vertical force to the turbo jump and a bit of kick to the rear when using the handbrake to power slide. Without those, the low speed meant the Buggy just wasn't fun to drive. On top of that, the world was full of unpredictable physics system-driven chaos. Players were bound to drive the Buggy into all kinds of collisions, so we had to make sure that they could always get out. This took a lot of experimenting and playtesting. In the end, we settled on a pretty goofy, unrealistic simulation that made the Buggy more forgiving and harder to flip. Its center of gravity is super low, and the wheels, while they look like they turn a lot, actually don't. It was our first attempt at a physically simulated vehicle, and we learned a ton from it. Thanks to that, we were able to make the muscle car in Episode 2 much easier to drive.
Transition tunnels. Building the coast required us to develop a way to handle level transitions. To move from one level to another, we need to save everything in the transition space as the player leaves the first level and restore it in the next level after loading. Critically, we also have to save and restore everything visible to the player in the transition area, even if it lies outside the space itself. For this reason, we aim to keep transition spaces as small and enclosed as possible. In most of the game, a small room works well for this purpose, but on the coast, we needed a different solution. After some experimentation, we settled on dark tunnels. Besides being reusable in a believable way, the tunnels allowed us to add a bright light flare at the end to mask the fact that we can't render what's ahead of the player, because it exists in an entirely different level.
Buggy sound engine. The audio for the Buggy was challenging because we wanted to feel like a really powerful vehicle that's driving along at super high speed, even though the maps aren't really big enough to support that, and the Buggy doesn't really leave first gear, and it has a top speed of maybe 35 miles an hour. Now, in our defense, 35 miles an hour is still pretty fast, especially back in 2004. In addition to the speed, the driving inputs are really simple. So with a keyboard as your target input device, the player's controls are basically binary. So the Buggy's either accelerating or not accelerating. It's turning fully in one direction or not. So essentially, we need to create all this audio complexity to represent a simulation where the complexity doesn't actually exist. So we build a fake engine for the Buggy's audio. It's got its own transmission, and we combine the player's inputs with data from the physics simulation. We measure the torque on each simulated wheel, whether it's spinning or making contact, and we create a set of looping sounds and then carefully blend between them as the fake engine shifts gears in response to the wheel data. And we just basically kept trying different things. We added more complexity. We did some fine-tuning until the Buggy just feels more fun and sort of rewards you for that feeling of going fast. And most players, they don't really comment on it other than saying the Buggy sounds good, and to us that's the success, given the amount of craziness that was going on under the hood.
Whenever possible, there's a lot of value in players feeling like they've figured something out on their own. It makes the world feel more alive, rather than just a series of gameplay elements lined up for the player. If we can accept the risk that some percentage of players might miss an element entirely, we can take a more subtle approach. We took this approach with Thumpers, designing setups the players are likely to encounter, but aren't forced to engage with. There are plenty of visual and audio cues, as well as inline reactions, to help the player understand what's happening. It doesn't guarantee all players will figure it out, but playtesting showed that most did.
Antlions. With the player driving the Buggy throughout the coast, we needed a pervasive enemy that could justifiably appear anywhere and act as a constant threat to keep the player in or near their Buggy. Antlions spawning from the sand were the perfect solution. Their high mobility allowed them to keep up with the Buggy for short bursts, unlike our humanoid enemies. Plus, they were very satisfying to run over.
coast. We wanted a wide open section of the game for the buggy, but we still needed a way to constrain the player's movement. Choosing a coastline gave us a natural boundary along one side of the map while still feeling open and expansive. It also helped visualize the effects of the Combine's extraction of Earth's resources. Playtesters still tried to swim out to sea, so we added leeches to deter them. The leeches couldn't be a real avoidable enemy the players felt they could fight, so they're a bit magical. Players generally understood that they were pushing the game's boundaries, so we didn't overdevelop them.
Grenade House. A lot of a Half-Life game is about giving players slightly novel combat experiences around each corner, even if they're just small tweaks on previous ones. They don't all have to be skill-based challenges. Sometimes they can just be fun moments where the player gets to enjoy themselves. This Grenade House is one of those moments, with the twist being that we've inverted the usual setup. Instead of letting the player drop grenades on enemies below, we've put the enemies above. The unlimited grenade box is a somewhat clumsy way to encourage players to engage with the scenario, but its invulnerability also ensures the players can still climb up to the floor above, even if they've blown up everything else.
Antlion design. In some of the earliest design work for the game, we had plans for multiple core alien races, with the Combine being just one of them. One of the other races was a religious insectoid species, and antlions were part of that. Later, as we developed Coast, we started viewing them more as pests that came through the Zen portals, along with headcrabs and other creatures. While they aren't actually from Zen, they infest the corners of any world they enter, a lot like cockroaches.
Buggy sound design. The sound design for the Buggy was based on samples from an old 1968 Camaro. And we chose that car because they have these amazing V8 engines with just huge pistons. And there's not really another sound like it. It has this sort of gutsy, visceral sound that we were looking for. The transmission also has this really wonderful mechanical whine when it stops accelerating. And that combination felt really responsive within this basically binary input system that we had to work with. So the fake engine transmission wasn't modeled after a real-world car. Instead, it was just designed as a simple system to reward the player for holding down the accelerator. So it's like a looping escalator that produces a rising tone, constantly building tension and shifting gears whenever the tone needs to restart. And since the player would quickly run out of space in our relatively small maps, the goal was just to make accelerating fun for a short period of time.
Open world loot. The openness of Coast introduced a new problem for us in how we distributed item rewards. In a Half-Life game, we typically reward players for exploring. If you see the way forward but notice something off to the side, there's probably something useful if you take the time to search. When we first started playtesting our Coast maps, we tucked rewards away in the corners of the outdoor areas. However, this led to a worse experience with the Buggy. The wide open spaces meant there were always lots of small areas that looked like they might contain something, and players kept stopping and getting out of the Buggy to search. It became tedious and interrupted the fun of the level. So, we removed those scattered rewards. But this raised a new problem. How do we tell the player when it's worth getting out of the Buggy? After some thought, we established a rule. Any kind of human construction would always come with gameplay content and exploration rewards, while purely natural areas would be left empty. We couldn't tell players this directly, but it aligned well with their natural assumptions, and we reinforced it consistently with areas like this.
Buggy birds. In one memorable Coast playtest, a player returned to their vehicle after exploring a house and happened to see a bird flying past. They yelled at the bird, telling it to stay away from their Buggy, complaining that birds often foul up their cars in real life. In our post-playtest discussion, we realized that this was the first time we'd had objects separate from the player that the player actually cared about. We saw it as an opportunity to explore, so we built a system to deliver the moment that playtesters feared. When the player leaves their Buggy alone for a while and is out of sight, we spawn a seagull at a random location on the vehicle frame. As time goes on, the seagull spawns poop decals on the car body beneath it and continues until the player returns, at which point it flies away. Naturally, Playtesters wanted to be able to clean their vehicle, so we added the ability to wash the car by driving it into shallow water. It was late enough in development that we already had the tech for all of this, so the feature was quick to implement. It's one of those cases where we know only a small percentage of players will discover it. But if we can implement these kind of details efficiently and have enough of them, most players will encounter at least one.
Boathouse. In Half-Life 1, we discovered we could get a lot of value from scenarios where different AI enemies fight each other. It's fun for players to watch them engage, and it's much easier to observe enemy behavior when you're not the one that's being threatened. This first encounter between antlions and combine soldiers is designed to be a fun opportunity to ram something with the buggy, but it also serves to highlight the thumper. By seeing the soldiers use the thumper to hold off antlions, we hope more players would come to understand its purpose. We liked how the soldiers demonstrated the value of staying near the thumper while engaging with the antlions.
Freeman! Hurry, get in the basement. We're expecting gunships at any moment. Colonel Cubbage will be glad to see you made it. This steerable rocket launcher is our best bet for taking down a gunship. Ah, hello. I'll be right with you. Now, where was I? Ah, yes. Using the laser guide, you can steer your rocket past the gunship's defenses and prevent it from shooting down your rocket. This will only anger it at first, but if you can survive long enough to make several direct hits, you'll be rewarded with a prize worthy of any mantelpiece. Now, who's going to be the lucky one to carry it into combat? Ah, yes, Gordon Freeman. I couldn't have asked for a finer volunteer.
Odessa Cubbage. Odessa Cubbage is an example of the kind of cameo character we found works well. He's an entertaining guy with some entertaining details, living inside his own little bubble. Since he doesn't leave his scenario, he's free to be exaggerated enough to stand out. We started with his model, which was repurposed from a cut section of the game, and named him after the title of a spam email we received. The model was originally a Norwegian fisherman, and it didn't quite fit as an Englishman, so we slapped a mustache on him, and in that moment, Odessa's character was born. He's ultimately a charlatan, with everything about him being fake. His accent, his mustache, everything. He would never put himself in danger, making him the perfect person to hand Gordon the RPG and explain exactly how to use it.
Laser-guided RPG. The laser guidance feature of the RPG was a huge headache for us because it was difficult to teach. Many playtesters would fire the RPG and then immediately duck behind cover, which meant they didn't see the rocket's flight path. Even worse, they didn't realize the rocket was now turning around to fly back at them. We tried various HUD elements and laser dot indicators to help, but found that most players overlooked them, focusing on the enemy instead. We made as many small improvements as we could, like emphasizing the feature in Odessa's speech and enhancing the audio and visuals around how the gunship shoots down direct RPG shots. While these changes helped some players grasp the feature, we never reached a point where we felt confident that almost everyone understood it. We even considered cutting the feature entirely, but gunship combat without it was much less interesting. The laser guidance forced the player to keep the gunship in sight while the rocket was in flight, but that also meant the gunship had line of sight back, creating a tension we loved.
Good luck in Nova Prospect, Dr. Freeman.
Combine gunship. The gunship was an interesting problem. We had a helicopter flight model already and didn't really have time to build something completely new. So we tuned the helicopter's flight model until it felt different enough, and then derived the gunship's organic animation state from the values coming out of that simulation. We also tried to keep it as truthful as possible. For example, there's a limit as how much it can turn its head to aim its cannon, and if it needs to aim beyond that, it has to alter its flight path to bring the cannon around to bear. It's not allowed to just cheat. The other key feature was its engine sound. We have sound spatialization, so the player can tell roughly where it is, but the gunship is a fast-moving object, and it's up in the air, away from any nearby reference points. As a result, it can be hard to tell exactly how far away it is and how fast it's moving. To fix that, we added a Doppler effect to the engine sound, pitch shifting it based on the gunship's velocity relative to you. It's a subtle effect, but it's extremely effective at subconsciously helping you perceive the gunship's location and direction, critical information letting you know that you're being hunted by it.
Flying vehicle audio. The large flying enemies in the game present a unique audio challenge. During combat, they're much more mobile than other enemies, and they often move a significant distance away from the player. They're also really dangerous if they have line of sight. So these factors led us to focus on an audio solution specifically around occlusion. In other words, when you can see the enemy and when the enemy can see you. And we wanted to make a clear audio distinction between when they have that line of sight. So the flying vehicle engine sounds are made up of multiple looping sounds that we play simultaneously. And some of those loops are processed by the DSP system based on the space you're in, while others are played directly and unprocessed. So the DSP system adds more of an environment echoing effect when we run sound through that system. So when the flying object is occluded behind something, it can't see you, we increase the percentage of loops that go through the DSP processing, and it sounds like that object is a little more distant. And then when that enemy emerges from behind an object and it can see you, we play more of the direct sound. So that overall just gives you a sense that the sound is either distant and directionless or more directly in your line of sight. And you can sort of hear it when a helicopter emerges from behind a building. Ideally, you can really hear that difference.
Well, that's that. I gather you've disposed of that gunship, Dr. Freeman. Your reputation, sir, is well deserved. I shall have someone open the gate for you immediately so that you can drive on. I understand that Dr. Vance is in great need. Use extreme caution when approaching the bridge. Radio silence from that outpost leads me to believe it has come under Combine control. Still, you're clearly the right man for the job. You'll make it through if anyone can. Farewell. And please tell Dr. Vance that Colonel Cubbage regrets not having been able to rescue him in person.
The Freeman must now hurry on. The Eli Vance is held in distress most dire. Is there reason for delay?
NLO to Lighthouse Point. NLO to Lighthouse Point. Come in. This is Colonel Cubbage. Come in, please.
Keep the Freeman safe.
NLO to Lighthouse Point. NLO to Lighthouse Point. Come in. This is Colonel Cubbage. Come in, please. Safely.